Ooh, hello. Hello, people. Awesome. How many peeps do we have here? Oh, Jeremy, hello. Hello, hello. Cool, cool. Do we have more people? Hello. If you guys are here and present, yes. Can I see faces? Just say hi in the chat. Like, just unmute yourself. Just say hi. Where you guys are from. Nice. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Awesome.
Hello.
How's everyone doing today?
Good.
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 Just a Tuesday. Yes. So we just got more people on. Awesome. Yes. CF, nice. Linda, hello. Nice, 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 nice. So we'll give it Gucci ads. Good stuff, man. So we'll give it another quick second here. We'll just wait till everyone starts to jump in, and then we can start. So for the most part, let me see screen share. Yes. Awesome. So nice. So can you guys see the presentation that's on here? Yes. Say yes in the chat, please. If not, then I can make some adjustments. Otherwise, we can move forward. Let's see. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. Coolio. So yeah, welcome everyone to today's EB webinar. Today we'll be covering LCVP OGV. So if you guys don't know, I am Alex. I am MCVP OGV for ISAC in Australia 1819. We'll go into more information there. But first, the agenda for today. So in today's webinar, we'll go through a couple key things in terms of the functional role. What is that for LCVP OGV? What does the function JD look like? What do you typically go through in terms of all of that? And then also in terms of the functions like current reality, I'll summarize where we're at as an entity so far in 2018 going into 2019. I'll summarize what it's like to be VP OGV, give you guys a little bit of context and background. Then also I'll open up a space near the end for you guys to have any questions if you guys do. So before we move forward, if we can mute everyone, thank you. That way we don't have any audio issues moving forward. If you do have any questions, try to save it for the end, and then I can open up the space for you guys. Otherwise, let's make sure everyone is muted, and then we can get started. So, yes. So on that note, we'll move forward. So if you guys don't know me, I'm Alex again. So I'm MCVP OGV for ISAC in Australia 1819. A little bit of background history on myself. I was LCVP OGV actually way back when in 2015. So I am an oldie, if you will. And then after that, I was LCP in 2016. These were both roles that I held back in the United States. So I was in ISAC in the US back in the day. And then I became NST OGT, so outgoing exchange again, but for ISAC in Korea. And then afterwards, I was MC for ISAC in Korea as well, so finance and OD, and then I also switched over to marketing. So, and then after that, for this year, I am MCVP OGV. So managing all the operations for the OGV product and outgoing exchange moving forward. So, cool. Again, try to make sure everyone is muted before we start. So moving forward then, Just a recap, if you guys weren't in the previous webinar space with Kiki and Jason, we are LCVP's OGV, right? You guys are going to take on to the role, but we're also members of the EB. So in a nutshell, working together as leaders of the LC. So just quickly recapping all of this information. So making sure that we're making executive decisions, supporting the performance of all the EB members, and then also making sure that our LC has both achieved that level of sustainability. So us as an organization, we're able to carry out what we need to execute and sort of see the impact that we want to see in the future. And we're also contributing and developing towards that achievement for the LC. So as part of the function as well, we're capacitating, empowering our members and TLs. So making sure that we're fulfilling all the functional promises, the contribution of our team, and making sure that the function itself is growing and developing to a better state at the end of our terms. So in terms of the functional role and measure of success of LCVP OGV, that is in all the completes that we actually achieve. So if you guys are a bit confused about that, this means in terms of the number of complete exchange experiences that we deliver from the outgoing exchange side. So percent GVA of completes achievement, that is our main MOS at the end of the day. So the number of complete experiences that we're able to create from Global Volunteer. And also moving forward as well, there are other measures of success. So the number of members and as well TLs that are able to achieve 70% of our goals, and then also 100% standards delivery for the team standards. So really making sure that we're both, again, achieving our operations, but also being able to deliver on the team leadership side as well. This is a quick summary for, again, for those of you who attended that webinar space. You guys can reference that. The video and the slides should be available to you after. But this is just a quick recap because, again, we're all part of the executive board team. So not necessarily just isolating the LCVP role just now, but just really recapping, we're part of the EB team and the leader of the function. So this is another quick recap for you guys as well. So in terms of the principles for managing managers, this is the idea when you're taking on an LCVP role, be it within the role of LCVP OGV or another EB role as well. So quick recap, these are the work, values, skills, and time if you guys were in the webinar space. Cool. And then quick briefs, EB non-negotiables. This is the non-negotiables for the EB just as a whole, making sure that we're able to achieve all of these as we execute this as being a part of the executive board team. So LCVPs, OGV, we're part of this management board for the LC. So with all of that cleared out, recapped, we're going to go into the functional JDs. So really breaking down now in terms of Global Volunteer, what is that and what do we need to understand about the role and responsibilities. So let's see, going into functional JDs. So as LCVP OGV, we are the main responsibles for a lot of the customer experience and the operations happening for Global Volunteer at the local level. So what does that actually mean? We are responsible for delivering Global Volunteer exchange experiences to youth, right? So the outgoing exchange side, we do a lot of interaction between customers and international relations, right? All the other incoming exchange side VPs in order to deliver these cross-cultural volunteering experiences. So making sure that we are able to deliver all of these experiences as a whole. And overall, let's see, hang on. Cool. Are you guys still having, can you still hear me? So just send a notification, let me know. Laptop is acting up a little bit. Otherwise, Moving forward again, we're also making sure that the right value proposition is communicated and the right expectations are set. So when we're going through all of the exchange experiences that we deliver, really making sure the value proposition of Global Volunteer has been like effectively communicated. So in terms of that, we're able to deliver leadership development experiences through our exchange. Lastly, we're communicating and working overseas with overseas LCs to ensure that the exchange experience is delivered. So communication for international relations management is also super important as we go through in terms of that operation. Cool. So yes, does that make sense? Can we get update in the chat? Yes. Is that clear? Yep. Yes. Shaw. Yippers. Awesome. Oh my God. Spam. Okay. Spamming all of this. Cool. 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 So moving forward. So that is the functional JD of the LCVP. Next, if we're going to summarize a bit more of the roles and responsibilities, this is making sure that all of our customers are going through the customer flow to go onto these exchanges, right? So everyone that is currently in a TL role or membership role managing these operations, going through and understanding how are we guiding the customer through the customer flow in order to deliver the exchanges. Second is making sure that the exchange standards are delivered so that the EP can go through a leadership development experience through the Global Volunteer Program. So understanding this is super, super important because without these exchange standards being delivered, we're not delivering an ISAC experience. Thus, the EP isn't going through a leadership development experience in order to achieve peace and fulfillment of humankind's potential, right? If we're not doing that, we're not able to actually deliver our job as LCVPs, global volunteer. Following that, we're going into process optimization and streamlining. So what I mean by this, in terms of the roles and responsibilities, is understanding what parts of our operational process are being implemented effectively and what isn't, right? So we're taking a look at the customer flow, what parts of it are being suboptimal for us to actually see the actual exchange results that we're expecting. And then also making sure that we're clearing the way, streamlining the whole process so that it's super simple, super clear for our TLs and our members to understand how to actually implement these operations on the day-to-day level. Next is also international relations management. So this is super, super important. We've actually started to focus on this a lot as a national entity. So if you guys are working with our partners, right, you guys have allocations with like a lot of the main partners, so Vietnam, Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia, but also as a whole, being able to communicate with the hosting entity in order to deliver with these exchange standards, as I mentioned before. So really making sure that the international relations are there so that we can ensure the exchange delivery. So going forward, right, we also, like what I mentioned before, the standards delivery, the analysis and understanding of operational data. So this is referencing all of the operations that we're tracking. So on Expo, right, you're looking at the operational data that you can track in terms of the number of applicants that went through, accepts and approves, going through all the way to the end of the stage with completes, right? So we're able to analyze and understand what sort of operational data is happening there. In addition to that, this is where we have the synergy with marketing, where we're understanding a bit more in terms of our marketing data as well. So what sort of operations are being effective to start feeding that pipeline, getting the signups, getting them opened, and then having those people go through the CC and applying to different opportunities. So really trying to understand the analysis and understanding of the operational data. Next is XSMR, right? So anyone who is currently helping out with like the operations right now with the product, XSMR is basically all of the exchange standards like monthly reporting, making sure that all of the information is put together and uploaded onto Podio. So that way we are tracking the current status of the exchange participant with a contract, as well as updates with the visa and like insurance. Next is going into just understanding how are we managing the product as a whole as the product head. So LCVP OGV is the product head of the LC in terms of this specific product. So we're referencing the global volunteer product. This team, the product team, includes all of the OGX, marketing, and talent management. So in terms of that EB role, you guys are having that synergy space, but you are the main responsible for the product at the end of the day. So, cool. Moving forward, if all of that makes sense, have any questions, save it for the end. Moving forward, if we were summarizing a lot of that process, this is what it would look like starting from the entire customer flow. So a lot of our responsibilities is following from that attraction phase onward until the end of the experience. So this is a lot to take in, but all in all, what you want to understand is understanding that from the moment the exchange participant signs up, they are a customer, and this is our responsibility to make sure that they go through and have an ISEC experience that is of that level of quality that we're expecting, and also meeting the standards that we're expecting as ISEC as an organization. So the metrics that we're tracking is the number in each status. So it's number of applied, approved, realized, finished, and complete, right? MOS, end of the day, is number of completes that we are achieving as entire national network. So any LCVPs would tell you that, like, yes, we do need to convert all of our EPs that have finished, right? They've completed that experience, but they haven't officially completed yet if they haven't gone through that process. Next is also the roles and responsibilities in regards to the conversion and the process time. So when we're tracking and managing all of our operational flow, we're taking that into account. How long does it actually take for us to actually move the customer through the experience in order to actually be realized and complete? Same goes for the conversion. So we're thinking about what sort of processes are allowing us to move through the customer flow, and actually making sure that it's essentially a seamless process for the exchange participant to go through, right? So if you think global volunteer, all of our exchange experiences, this is a product in itself, a single experience for them to actually go through. And we're making sure that the conversion is actually happening. So we're taking into account how many exchange participants move from each stage, so from open to applied, applied to approved, and so on, in order for us to actually achieve the end result, which is these leadership development experiences and completes. Cool. So if that makes sense, quickly recapping a little bit of the current state of OGV. So right now, with all of the operations, we are implementing a lot of strategy directly towards international partnership implementation. So understanding how are we actually working very closely with the hosting entities, as well as our main international relations partners. So what sort of partnerships are we establishing at the local level, and how do we start implementing that on the day-to-day in order to see results? Because one thing you guys also need to understand when you start going through the election process is with the nature of what we do as an organization, it's really understanding that a lot of our operational growth won't happen without the communication with other ISEC entities in the network that actually deliver the rest of the exchange experience, right? So we're only on the outgoing exchange side. If we're not communicating with the other half, the hosting entity that actually delivers the bulk of the exchange experience, we're not able to actually see the growth and development that we want to see. Next is we're growing so far in 2018 with the later stages of the conversion with customer flow. So from accept to approved, if you look at your LC's data and the numbers, you can actually see we're starting to see a lot of growth in terms of the conversion, as well as the number of people that are going through that part of the flow. However, in addition to that, we're also dropping in terms of the earlier stages of the customer flow. So in terms of the attraction activities and opens, as well as the number of applicants, they've dropped significantly compared to the previous years, as well as overall as ISEC in Australia, compared to the rest of the Asia Pacific region and globally as well. So that's another key inference we want you to take away. Another thing is objection handling with the exchange participants. So understanding the customer market as of now, right? Understanding that these are people that are really looking for specific things in terms of their experience, really making sure that it's super, super clear, right? Being also like millennial and like Gen Z, like understanding these exchange participant profiles really comes into play a lot with the objection handling. So we've started to have a lot of shift towards newer, younger customers like coming in, of course, as each generation comes in. That comes in with a new profile, and then also how do we objection handle there. So as an entity, we're actually struggling a little bit, especially in the earlier stages, to actually communicate what sort of value proposition we have, and then also what objections are the EPs having as we go through each stage of the flow. So that is a summary of the current state of OGV. Next, I am going to introduce a little bit of information. So this is a brief snapshot and summary of this entire year in terms of operations for the current state of OGV. So really briefly, this is something that you can also pull from EXPA. If you're looking at the exchange participant data, you can go through the graphical analysis and you can pull up similar charts. If you plug in all of these filters, as you see above, just changing the dates, this is what it currently looks like for February 1st up until now. So up until the end of September 30th, this is what the exchange data actually looks like. So if you look at this, we actually have most of our exchange participants coming through our funnel near the end of the year. So beginning of the term, February, March, April, May, we do get a certain number of exchange participants coming through, but the bulk, roughly about 80% of our exchange participants actually come from July onwards. So this is one key thing to take note of in terms of operational strategy, ideas on how to start building up until that later end of the year, where it is the biggest peak. How do we actually make sure that we're starting to tackle the issues earlier into the stages so that we're all set and ready as we move forward near the end of the year for the summer peak. Same thing goes for the number of applicants and the number of realizations. We have a lower number as we go into the earlier stages of the year with a peak happening near May and June for the first peak. And then, right, we're in the middle of our summer peak right now. So most of the realizations will be coming, as you see, a little bit later into the year. So things to take note of in terms of the current state for this year so far in terms of OGV. In addition to that, there's also, again, data that you can reference on EXPA, referencing the later years as well. Yeah, so on that note, just to quickly summarize what it's like to be LCVP OGV, just giving a few insights as a previous LCVP OGV. This was something that I really fully enjoyed in my ISAC experience. This was my first true leadership role. I actually joined as a member and straight away became LCVP elect for the next year. But as you see on the left, this is my team, and then on the right, this is my LC when we first started. Going through the LCVP OGV experience, a lot of the roles and responsibilities really came to what I was mentioning before with the job description, really making sure that the team leadership and the management is actually happening. Because again, if you can see, like, this is a pretty large team. It's super important to make sure that we are delivering 100% of the team standards there, but also we are understanding in terms of the entire customer flow, what needs to happen in terms of that operation. So really making sure that we understand the SOPs and really making sure that's actually happening. And then the last, which is probably one of the more important ones as well, it's the international relations. So being LCVP OGV, like having to manage a lot of that was one of the key things that I faced when I was starting my LCVP term with these groups of people. So a lot of these people were helping a lot with the IR management, but it was still driven from a national side, still trying to see how do we align with our operations to actually contribute and connect the customer market to what we're doing at the national level. So say, for example, right now we're doing a lot of promotion with Vietnam and Taiwan. How did we actually scale that down to the LC and really integrate that into the strategies that we have in place? So that was one thing that I was able to recognize when I was LCVP. A lot of things coming back to that management and the leadership that I had with my team, the actual operational procedures that needed to be implemented, and how clear is it with myself and also like the rest of the team, understanding how to make that happen. Then lastly is that partnership management, really making sure that international relations were super clear on how we can communicate with other ISAC entities to make exchange happen within the network. So with what it was like to be LCVP OGV, it was definitely like super challenging. If you guys aren't familiar with international relations or even managing like large teams, like as you saw earlier, it was managing a group of managers. It will be a challenge earlier on, but as you go through and understand how to improve a lot of the processes, it will get easier as you move forward into the rest of the term. Especially as you go into the later half of the term, that's where a lot of the support will be coming in from the national side. So in a nutshell, that was pretty much it. Just to summarize again, we went through the JD of the LCVP OGV, quickly summarizing what that entails, then also identifying what are the roles and responsibilities. There's a couple things there, especially in those three areas. So in terms of international relations, SOP, and then also the network management, making sure all of that happens. Lastly, it was just recapping where are we at currently in terms of ISAC in Australia. So as you guys saw, we did break a little bit over 122 approvals so far during this peak. And we're aiming to get a lot more as we move forward into the next year. So that's where hopefully I'll be able to see a lot of you guys, working with you guys closely on that. Otherwise, just quickly summarizing some key things from my LCVP experience. Took a lot of lessons that are still applicable today, really making sure that I was trying to focus on a lot of the key things that are still pretty relevant. So partnership management, the operations as a whole, and then also making sure I'm capacitating my network and my team to actually make sure we are delivering significant leadership through exchange through the global volunteer experience. So with that, I am opening up the space for everyone that has any questions that might have popped up during this entire time I was having like a spiel. So I was talking this whole time. I want to open up the space. So if you guys can, please open up your camera and then also your microphone, right? When you guys are all set, and then I'll open up the space for anyone who has any questions as of right now. So yes, and yeah, so please turn the camera on, turn the microphone on, that way I can hear you, get to see you.
Hello?
Hello, yes. Johan. Cool. Can we go one person at a time, guys? Especially for people that are in the same room.
Yeah, cool. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, nice. Sorry. So, I was wondering, when it comes to IR, how do we like push for that? Because a lot of the time, from what I've noticed is the hosting entities tend to contact us and want to establish a partnership and a goal of like the number of the number of approves they want us to send to them. But how are we going to deliver on that promise kind of thing? And how do we actually come up with that goal of what it would be realistic for us to send them?
Yeah, and a lot of that, if you notice, like a lot of that actually happening, that's actually like part of the international relations like management process, right? So initial stages actually come down to first understanding like a bit of like our market, right? So that's where the synergy comes in with marketing, understanding that this is what our current supply and demand comes in. So our supply of exchange participants that can actually fill these positions, this is what we can understand so far. Next, it's also understanding that we need to find the like supply of other opportunities that would be able to match the customer market that we currently have, that we have access to, and which entities would be able to help fit that, right? So on the national side, that's why we have these 4 like national partners, because across the network, we actually have a lot of like demand for exchange participants from Australia from these entities, right? Due to a variety of reasons. It's similar to like if you're having any entities starting to approach on that note, it's understanding that, and as like an LCVP OGV, it's having the insight and understanding like this is what I know about like my customer market. Can this actually fit the demand of the incoming side, right? So if we're understanding like different like opportunity profiles, they're looking for different people, maybe from different backgrounds or skills. A lot of it isn't as strict in terms of global volunteer, but they are looking for a lot of different things. Same thing goes with the exchange participant. They're looking for a lot of different parts of the exchange opportunity that we can like provide. That's where like the demand would be for the exchange participant. And we're trying to match those up as well. So in terms of international relations management, it comes down to a lot of those, understanding the supply and demand, who are our customers, and which sort of opportunities can we actually provide for them.
I have another question on IR, because there were a couple of like specific LC to LC partnerships. Was that established by the national team, or was that established by the LCVPs? Like, for example, Taiwan, it was RMIT together with CCU, and
Yeah, so in terms of those, the way the national partnership currently works is we have a lot of work behind the scenes to understand a bit more about the current LC realities, and then also finding how can we align that with these LC to LC partnerships, right? So if you guys were around for like earlier into this year, right, we had Cedars go on to these exchanges to try and establish this IR partnership better to like another level. So really understanding a bit more about what sort of opportunities there are, and also understanding how can we align both sides, the incoming and the outgoing, to really understand what are the realities of each of the LCs, and how can we make sure that's super, super clear, and making sure that we are able to carry that out. So a lot to answer the question, a lot of the partnerships, especially for like these entities, are established from the national side. A lot due to the support with like Cedars, and then also feedback from LCVPs as well.
Okay, and then you talked about how you were looking at the realities of each entity, but so what was the basis to have gotten you guys to say, okay, so this LC should be together with this other LC?
Yeah, so that comes down to a couple like factors, just in terms of like understanding the current reality, and like again, comes back to a lot of like the supply and demand, what sort of opportunities are provided. So in terms of the global volunteering experience, right, we do have different opportunities that are available. A lot of them, right, the difference between project-based, which might mostly be run by ISEC entities themselves, and the international, like the projects hosted from the IR side, in terms of like all of the like partnership-based ones. So these are NGOs, other partners that they have on the incoming side. Like there's a clear distinction between like which LCs are providing like which ones, if you look into each of like the opportunities there. And then also what is the current state of the LC as a whole. So maybe in terms of like being able to have like that servicing, or even what sort of resources can they actually provide in order to make sure like this volume of exchange actually happens. So that goes into a lot of other like factors as well, in terms of like the TM side, a lot of the a lot of the financial side as well in terms of the OGV side, IDV side as well on the incoming side. So there's a lot of different factors that relate to that. The main one being that supply and demand, like understanding like which LCs would be like best fitted based on that sort of profile of the supply and demand analysis.
Oops, thank you.
Cool. Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one. So for my LC, when we established our partnerships, we based it off past data of like how many exchange participants we sent to like IR partners, and but then when we were actually promoting it, a lot of our kind of market wasn't interested in it at all. So in terms of that, it's how do we account for rapid changes in the market when we establish our partnerships?
Mm-hmm. So accounting for the partnerships and the changes in the market, this is one thing that you guys would need to understand how to manage as LCVPs moving forward into the term. So there's always a couple of months in terms of when we have the attraction and the consideration. So each of those spaces, that's really understanding two parts, which is that our management side, but also the synergy side. That's one major part that comes into play with this, right? So if we're understanding that in terms of the market, we're not able to actually reach a lot of these people, or just people are generally not interested in the opportunities now after a period of time, what sort of strategy do we need to adjust? This is related to how are we having that synergy with marketing and OGV in order to actually reach the target market that we're expecting and also identify the supply that is getting more of that market traction. So to answer that question, really comes down to those two areas, how are we understanding how to manage IR effectively? That's one thing that we're actually tackling during this term, but also how does that synergy actually look like and actually play out in terms of that communication between LCVP marketing, LCVP OGV, being basically one side of the same coin, right? That's OGV, the other side is marketing. Really making sure that this is being super clear, and then being agile enough to start adjusting a lot of the strategies in place when you guys are making those in order to actually see the changes, say weekly, monthly, what needs to happen, and then you guys are adjusting accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
I have another question about IR again. I'm sorry. With there's something. It was about. Damn, I forgot. Wait. It was about. Oh yeah. Okay. So for example, because compared to other universities, for example, RMIT, we have based on the data, bulk of our students are international students, and a lot of them come from, for example, Asia, and the reality is different compared to the other unis and Australia as a whole. So is there a how do you guys actually how do you guys track the countries that people are interested in apart from data? And with, for example, RMIT, how do we try to cater it in such a way that we can match to the national, or is there a possibility that even with the national partners we can actually form a different partnership? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on that note, that's more something that is managed on the national side to try and give more recommendations on which entities to prioritize in terms of being able to actually track that. So if you guys are looking for insights on how to do this strategically, a lot of this comes back to really just making sure when you are going through the week by week, just really making sure you're understanding super clear with the marketing side. That's where most of that tracking takes place. That's why it's also a little bit confusing with tracking it without the data. You can also see where everyone is coming from with different reporting in like terms of like each stage of like the customer flow, and especially like if you're looking at the earlier stages, like where like in terms of like referrals example, where are these people actually like coming from. But in terms of like which sort of like supply or like are they like normally interested, that's actually where a lot of the strategy like can take place between OGV and marketing. Say for example, initiatives to understand customer market, right? What sort of implementation needs to happen from the local side to actually understand that further. Besides just being reactive, of course, getting the exchange participants, you take a look at the information of the data, and then you start implementing the shifts. So that's one way where you can start seeing like a bit more in terms of like which entities would be more suitable for like that partnership building, besides of course like the ones on the national side being scaled down and looking at different operational data, so that way you can give recommendations on which areas to focus on, like which LCs, which entities. Cool. So, any other questions? Thank you, Elisa.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
What are the most common bottlenecks LPs in Australia has faced, and is there any bottlenecks that was very prominent during your time as LCVP back in America, and how did you go about it?
So can you repeat the question again? It's a bit loud on that side. Can you repeat again? It's a bit loud and it cut out a little bit. Yes. Hello. Oh no.
Yeah, I can repeat that.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What are the most common bottlenecks LCs in Australia has faced that was also prominent during your time as LCVP in America, and how did you go about it?
Okay. Thank you for repeating. Cool. So most common bottlenecks that are prominent in Australia that I also face, I would have to say a lot of that would come down to how are we doing the operational like procedures. So especially with the objection handling, that's always a lot of major bottlenecks there. Most of the time, it's due to being unable to communicate the information correctly. So any of the conversions, any of that, like that was a big struggle that I also faced like back in the day. A lot of my members actually faced a lot of that, and the reason why was because we weren't focused in that sense in terms of what sort of projects or opportunities that we're actually trying to promote, right? So at each stage, is it super clear for the exchange participant? That was one thing that we weren't able to focus on like as well earlier into the year. But then like we were able to pick that up near the end of my term, mostly because we started having a really strong emphasis on international relations, really like clarifying like this is what opportunities are with these like LCs, these entities, and then making it super clear and super specific. A lot of times that's where a lot of the main bottlenecks are happening now, looking into it as well. So we're seeing a lot of times in CC spaces, for example, being unable to get an exchange participant to like apply to an opportunity. Even then, like we do have exchange participants applying to an opportunity, yes, but a lot of different opportunities. Not really having enough information to really say like I fully understand what the experience is going to look like before they click on that apply button. That causes a lot of other bottlenecks later on, especially with the follow-up process. Say, for example, with the hosting entity. So I see a lot of like familiar faces in terms of like GV, like TLs, and like if you guys have seen that, like any issues with communicating with hosting entities, that is where you would have experienced like a bottleneck there. Just slow reaction time, like communication would have been like slow. And then later on, the other major bottleneck that we also had was just that final confirmation. So it was like the accept to approve stage, right? So a lot of times it's as university students, a lot of times we are normally very indecisive. So that causes a lot of issues on how do we do expectation settings and management like that. One issue where it comes up, again, accept to approved, right? So if we're not super clear in terms of the information, what to expect, and having the proper expectation settings before they go through that application process, that earlier stage in the customer flow, that's where that next bottleneck happens, where we can't actually convert and actually present the value delivery phase of everything, because they're still on the fence about which opportunities do they actually want to go through. So I actually experienced that a lot in my LCVP term as well. One thing that I tried to do to like try and influence that was really make sure that there was like a super clear like process laid out for the exchange participant, even creating like resources, like using natural resources as well, to make sure like the exchange participant is super clear on what sort of project, as well as that entire procedure, what they need to do next after they click on apply. But yeah, cool. Does that help answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Coolio. Any other questions, guys? Anything else in particular?
I have
Anything
another
specific
one.
about the role? Yeah, cool.
More on like SDG based. Like are there any other IR partners, or has it ever been tried out where partners are based on SDGs? Does that make sense? Yeah. Because for example, in RMIT, a lot of people are more into like sustainable communities and cities, as well as the brown color one, something about sorry, that's all I can remember. Economic growth, yeah, that one. So yeah, how would you actually look for partners that would ensure value delivery without us? Yes.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm still laughing at Isha laughing in the background. So for the most part, that is a bit of a tricky question actually to answer, because a lot of times it is still going through that process of that research and also exploration of what other opportunities are available. That's where a lot of the national alignment comes into play, right? So for now, like a lot of these partnerships have slowly been integrated and built upon as years like progress. And then we're starting to see like which other areas of the market can still be accessed based off of like different LC realities, and moving forward from there, like with the right like supply of opportunities that can be presented. So for the most part, that's still actually something that's in the works. Just doing more of that market research understanding. We're at the current state right now, just because like we've done a lot of basic ones in the past. As we evolve and understand a bit more in terms of like the rest of the market, having more of the strategies in place to do so, that will help clarify a lot of things in terms of understanding, like, yeah, like we know a lot of exchange participants are going to this specific project, like say this SDG, for example. How can we make sure that we're filtering through that, and then also working with the national teams to identify which entities would have the biggest supply and the better quality in terms of the opportunities that can be delivered. So, cool. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Cool. So we still have 10 minutes on the clock. Any other questions? Any final ones? Any other questions? Oh, cool.
Hello. In terms of our main IR partners, what are the common trends that you observe with our EPs that have already been approved or have already been realized? And what can we actually do more? Like, do you have any advice that help to improve our value delivery in terms of like with our national partnerships?
Yeah. So to help with that, it's actually understanding, right, with with our partnerships and making sure that we're like improving the value delivery, especially on that side. This is where that communication comes into play, right? So being integrated into as part of the business as usual, like operations, also like as like integrated into like the strategy, how can we make sure that the communication is being developed with these partners? The expectation setting, right? So any of the spaces that are leading into the, prior to the realization, what sort of things can we do to best prepare the exchange participants specifically for what they will experience for that entity? So national partners wise, just pure example here, taking Vietnam, what sort of preparation do they need to understand for Vietnam as an entity, right? So we understand all the project details, what prior preparation do we need to do for that, but also what sort of cultural preparation, other information do we need to make sure is super clear for the exchange participant, specifically for that country. So that is another super important thing that we're doing. So really making sure that's happening prior to the realization. What sort of understanding do we need to have with the hosting entity in terms of really being super clear on the experience that they're going to go through and what things they should be aware of before they enter that country. Because again, we have culture shock management, all these different things. Maybe it's something that they haven't experienced before, like the exchange participant being the first time abroad even sometimes. So you really want to make sure that you're paying attention to that, especially a lot of those expectation settings and really being super clear on what the hosting entity side is looking for and setting those expectations. So that's more of like our management side on that. If that clarifies anything. Who is that? Linda? Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Alex.
Cool.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah. For UNSW, like in the coming year, we have trimester coming, so but we have the largest EP open during before semester 1 all day. So like how can we still maintain similar amount of approves as past year, and what can we do to like actually make the summer peak like even better than before?
Mm-hmm. So this is a very interesting challenge that some LCs will start to face. There's changes in terms of the normal like semester timeline. This will be a big focus I would recommend paying attention to, just in terms of finding that EP supply. However, this is more like the marketing side, of course. This will lean into, yes, we have like what sort of supply of opportunities from the hosting entity side based off of like that university timeline. We know that it's mostly during the breaks. Which opportunities are actually going to be created during that period of time for that realization? The second part is also making sure that in terms of a lot of our marketing and our attraction strategies, that is synchronized and synergized with the LCVP marketing, right? So it's taking into account there is going to be that change. What do we need to adjust in terms of like how are we approaching the marketing side on that? What we can do actually on like the OGV side to actually influence that is still providing like that knowledge of what opportunities are available during this period. Cool.
Yep. Thank you.
Cool. So, any other questions? A few minutes left, guys. If you have any questions in regards to any of this stuff. So, it's cool to hear a lot of questions about IR, right? I'm super keen on that. Like that's something that's really fun. But is there anything else in terms of more of the role itself, like the functional JD, like more of the responsibilities, any other stuff like that?
In terms of like managing members and like teams and that kind of thing, what would be one of your key learnings from that experience?
So, key learnings from my LCVP experience was really make sure that I'm paying attention to how I'm managing and leading my network, right? So in terms of my team, I actually ran into a situation where I had 2 TLs, 10 members, and then like some people had to leave due to like more personal reasons. And then I was managing and like leading a team of like 5+ like people. That's a lot of people. The key thing from that was really making sure that I was paying attention to each of their like needs and what sort of things that they actually need in order to actually perform their roles. In addition to really making sure that I'm addressing that like team like culture, that environment that really fosters that engagement, the behavior that we really want to see. Because it is like super easy, especially as a product head as LCVP OGV, to get really caught up into the operations and then also sometimes neglect the people, right? But really making sure that if you're able to like manage the day-to-day operations, so everything in terms of the team centers with like the weekly meetings, tracking the GVAs, like making sure that we are implementing a lot of these things, but also again like making sure that's also connected with like the personal development of our members, identifying like what sort of team culture are we like fostering and like creating in order to like have people like really want to be there and like be excited, like what sort of drives a lot of people. I think that was one thing that I learned when I was LCVP, and making sure not to neglect either one, right? Because you need both to be able to actually make sure like all the operations actually happen for the product. So when I was doing a lot of these IR things, a lot of these day-to-day like operations, maybe like the SOP like operations, it wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for like my team and the environment that we were able to foster and like getting people to like stay like connected to why we're here, and also like really making sure like they see like the value in like taking on a lot of these roles and responsibilities, because it's like, yeah, it does get to be like a grind, but it is like very, very rewarding when you see an exchange participant like going on their like first exchange, like seeing their development from when you had that initial meeting with them to when they came back after that experience. You're able to like observe that and see. It's super, super, super cool. But being able to tie in like everything that we're doing on the day-to-day to really resonate with like, yeah, that's the thing that we're going to be able to see at the end of the day. This is why it's important, because you're actually changing lives. You're actually changing what Australia is going to look like when we deliver the global volunteering program. So yeah, those are a lot of the main things. A lot of it came back to that leadership and the management.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Cool. So yes. So yeah, with that, we're actually running out of time because we're going to have the other webinar coming up soon. So for global talents with our MCVP IGT here. So
Hi, Eileen.
So yeah, if you guys know anyone that is interested for that, send them over that way. The link is on Facebook. Otherwise, to quickly sum up for today, hopefully this was helpful for you guys understanding a bit more in terms of the role, sort of responsibilities and things to look forward to and understand about being LCVP OGV. If you do have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to message me on like Facebook or anything if you do have me on there. Otherwise, key tips before we end like this webinar. Make sure like a lot of things are like super clear. Never like forget to like have that like network understanding, like that management of like how are we leading our teams, and also really being super clear on how are we doing a lot of these operational procedures, because those are some of the most important things to actually drive how our success looks like for a global volunteer. So on that note, that is it for today's webinar. Again, if you do have any questions, message me over Facebook, reach out to me. And then, yes, thank you guys so much for coming. Super excited to see you guys like go through the process. We can sign off here, and then, yes, that is it for today. Thank you guys.
All right. Thanks,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes. See you, Ashal. Thank you guys.